that the state's anticipated receipts from revenues in this fiscal year have already disappointed, and that the governor is looking to an additional $432 million deficit for state government. And the only way that can be addressed basically is through cuts, and there are going to be cuts to state government. And quite frankly, the local jurisdictions are not going to escape unscathed. They just can't. There have been so many cuts. In the special session of the General Assembly last year, they passed about $1.3 billion in additional revenue generations for the state. The state in the last 2 years has cut $1.8 billion in cuts and or reduced growth of programs. The other component of the budget reconciliation process was slots. Slots was to generate $660 million for education. So it was all three of those things were intended to take care of the state's structural deficit. But with the economy tanking the way it is, both and really nationally as well as locally, revenues from the taxes that were anticipated just aren't being produced. So, and there's no ability right now and no will to increase any taxes. So they're going to do cuts, and they're going to affect local government.
Okay. The referendum that you'll see at the vote booth says that it would authorize the state to issue up to 5 video lottery licenses for the primary purpose of raising revenue for education of children in public schools, pre-kindergarten through grade 12, public school construction and improvements, and construction of capital projects at community colleges and higher education institutions. The Maryland Association of Counties, a bipartisan group, has come out strongly in support of this referendum. Can you tell us a little bit why and tell us more about the education funding?
Well, just as the association had the same position in the prior administration, the Ehrlich administration, as it has had in the O'Malley administration. What we said was, if you will come up with a comprehensive approach to resolving the budget deficit, we will support it. And they did. They did cuts, they did revenue generators, and they did slots. And we are supporting slots. And slots is really critical for local government, because if that $660 million doesn't come in for education is going to be cut, or other programs that have already been cut and cut and cut again are going to be cut further, and that's going to impact health departments locally. It's going to impact public safety locally in order to maintain the commitment to education. So that $660 million is really critically necessary for the fiscal stability of the state, but also of Baltimore County as well as jurisdictions across Maryland. And we know that, and that's why we're supporting it.
So the slots funding that comes in primarily goes to these public education projects, but it goes additional places as well?
Well, 48 to 52% goes to education, and the rest goes to a variety of some goes to horse racing, horse breeding, some goes, 75 million of it goes to impact aid for infrastructure and community improvements for those jurisdictions that where the slot powers are going to be located. Now, that's 5 jurisdictions, as you just read. It's Rocky Gap in western Maryland. It's an area in Laurel, an area on the eastern shore. Downtown Baltimore has a site, and Cecil County has a site. They're the 5 locations. And 15,000 machines are allowed at those locations. You know, the interesting thing, some of the people who say, well, this is just the beginning, those who are not supporting slots, this is a constitutional amendment. The only way there could be any increase beyond what I just described is if the voters approved in some other referendum in the future additional machines. So it's a bogus, really a bogus complaint or argument in opposition to slots. We really do need this slot money just to maintain. I mean, we talked about enhancements, but with the economy tanking the way it is, we're going to need that to just keep up with where Maryland and locally Baltimore County want education to be.
What sense do you have of how much Maryland money or how many people are leaving the state to go to these neighboring states to play slots?
Well, there have been studies that have been done by labor licensing and regulation, as well as by the Department of Business and Economic Development, that 30 to 35% of Charlestown in West Virginia comes from Maryland. 30%, a minimum of 30% of Delaware's receipts come from Maryland. So hundreds of millions of dollars are leaving our state, going to our neighbors, and Pennsylvania is just getting up. So, I mean, there's going to be even another big draw from Maryland for the Pennsylvania gambling interests. And that money is supporting these other governments, and we really need that money. We need it at home.
Now, one of the concerns that people voice about slots is gambling addiction and concern about how the slots parlors might negatively impact communities. How do you respond to that concern?
Well, they say it without any backup for it. The National Academy of Sciences has done an analysis and says in the country it's about 0.9 to 1.5% of the population are problem gamblers. Other studies that have been done have indicated that the location of slots or casinos in an area do not increase that percentage of gambling. The National Institute of Justice has done an analysis that location of casinos does not increase crime in the area. I mean, people say the opponents of slots say these things, but they don't have any backup for it. And the analysis and the studies that have been done indicate that there is minimal impact from locating. And the slots, the referendum issue does include $6 million committed to problem gambling, addictive gambling. So that there are built into the measure an acknowledgement that there may be some social repercussions, and there's some money set aside to try to address those issues.
That's very interesting. You mentioned the horse racing and horse breeding industry.
Right.
I like horses, I guess, but it's not something I think about every day. Why should the average Marylander be interested in helping that?
Well, number one, it's a huge industry. It's a $5.2 billion in assets. It's about $765 million in feeding into the economy for salaries and expenses that go into the general economy. It's 8,900 jobs. So it's a big impact. But the other thing it is a tremendous tax-free way to preserve land, because these breeding farms, these agricultural farms and the agricultural industry makes a huge amount of money from racing and horse breeding with the agricultural products that they supply to this industry. But we preserve a lot of open space in Baltimore County and elsewhere as a result of horse breeding farms and agricultural areas where we don't pay a dime for it. Now, we do a lot of buying easements and that kind of thing, so we're doing a lot of that. But this is tax-free, and it preserves open space. But it is a tremendous industry in and of itself. Slots is anticipated to bring 3,600 new jobs to Maryland, paying $33,000, a minimum or starting salary of $33,000 plus benefits. I mean, that's another infusion of value into our state.